Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Shadowcast. We've got a very exciting edition for you today. We are joined by two guests. The first one is a titan of paranormal research, Dr. Hugh Pinoctt. Good afternoon, Dr. Pinoctt.
Good afternoon, Your Grace.
And we are also joined by Lou Hotchkiss-Knives, who today is going to be telling us about a haunting in France. Good afternoon, Lou.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, so let's get started.
Wow.
Lou, can you tell us what was happening with your friend in France?
Right, so to give you a bit of background, my best mate, who I'm not going to identify here, and at our request, we met when we were 4. She came from quite a poor family, and they lived in this house which the family had lived in for about 100 years. And when we were about 12, that's when the activity started. So it started one night when she was in bed reading a book, and she heard these 3 big knocks at what seemed to be the back of the cupboard. It's a wardrobe, sorry. And at first she thought it was a bit weird, but that night she happened to be reading a Stephen King's book. So she thought, I'm just spooking myself because I'm reading Stephen King. The night after that, she heard 13 knocks, very spaced out, but the last one was very loud. And she said to me when we were talking about it on the phone the other day, she said, I immediately thought that's something paranormal. It's really weird. She immediately thought ghost, right? But she was so scared that she cried, and she went to tell her mom. And her mom said, okay, I'll sleep with you the next night. I'm sure it's nothing. Everything will be good. So the next night, her mom went to sleep with her. And this time they heard like 3 knocks, but not in the cupboard, on the wall, as if somebody was tapping with the palm of her hand. So they both thought he was the dad playing a joke on them because he was sleeping in the next room. And when they asked him the next day, he absolutely denied it. So her mom started thinking that this was weird, So she continued sleeping with her, and that would go on for a long time. So there were knocks, and there was stains of blood. So after the knocks stopped, she had by the side of her bed a little Walt Disney carpet with a rabbit on it, the Snow White rabbit,
Oh, yes.
And they started having fresh blood stains on it. And because she had loads of pets, originally they thought maybe one of the cats bled on the carpet. So they banned all the animals from the room upstairs. And then, the blood starting to become an everyday thing. So we're not talking about puddles now. We're talking about little things like that or specks. But you could see it was still fresh. And so quickly it became a combination of like knocks and blood. And that became the kind of thing that they had every day. And then there was like a pattern that set itself in place. So they had lots of animals. I think nowadays we'd say they're animal hoarders. It's not the case anymore now. But when she was little, they had lots of pets, and they probably didn't always have the means to feed them, right? And so she had loads of hens. And obviously, you know what it's like with hens and roosters. You start with one, and before you know it, you've got 50. So she had all the roosters put in the garage. And one of the things that started happening was that at 2:20 in the morning, and that's generally when things were starting to go wrong in the night, it was always at 2:20, they would hear all the roosters singing, and then things would start to happen. And so the mom got so spooked out that she asked the dad to sleep with them. Right? So they ended up sleeping the 3 of them in the room. And the dad, for ages, didn't believe in it. He thought he was with 2 hysterical women who were believing in stuff that went there. Because every time the noise would happen, he would be asleep. And that went on for a while. So he never saw anything. And then things went up a notch when items started moving. So at the time, I was already interested in, paranormal things. So I bought this magazine, and it had a little pendulum on it. To try to use a pendulum. And I was absolutely useless at it. So I said, hey, you can have my pendulum. And the pendulum, there seemed to be quite a lot of activity around it. So sometimes they'd find it and there would be knots in the chain. Sometimes the chain would be broken and they'd have to repair it. And sometimes it would disappear and reappear in really weird places. So at first they thought it was to do with the pendulum, but clearly not, as you'll see later. And things went crazy with the pendulum, because you put it in a box, it reappear in the oven or under someone's pillow, or and one day they said to her dad, look, we're going to make an experiment. We're going to take the pendulum, we're going to lock it in this box, we're going to put the key of the box into a cupboard, we're going to lock the cupboard, you take the key, and we'll see if the pendulum's still in the box tonight. Yeah. And when he returned, they retrieved the pendulum, or tried to, because it wasn't in the box anymore. 2 days later, the pendulum reappeared under the dad's pillow, and on the pillow was like a circle of little blood droplets. So I don't know if you've come across situations when there was blood involved, blood stains anywhere.
No, not from what you've said so far. It seems to be a fairly almost standard catalogue of events, but no, not blood. And the presence of animals too, that's rather rare. But then, of course, these things can evolve. I mean, there's not necessarily one standard template, if you like. And it could well be that it depends upon the participants, their sensitivity to influences in the environment. But I was intrigued about the fact that the roosters seemed to be highly responsive. You used a rather interesting term, singing, and I'm sure that's what it sounded like.
Yeah, in French, you say chanter for a rooster.
Right.
You say crowing in English, don't you?
Sorry?
What's the term for a rooster singing in English? Is that crowing?
Crowing, perhaps?
Right. So in French, they chante. So I just translated it literally.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, not at all. That's maybe that's how it was sounding. Maybe it was singing.
But he was always at night. He was always around that time, and even recently there was event at that time as well. So there was all kind of things from then that happened with different objects that started to move. There was like a pot of makeup cream which was shaped like a ball, and that used to be found at various places around the house. There was a clock that was on the mantelpiece, and they'd have it up straight, but they kept finding it leaning against the wall as well. That was another thing. And things started getting really quite crazy when, in France on All Saints' Day, so which is like Halloween, basically, people go on the graves of their family members and they put flowers on, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so one year, a mom said, "Oh, it was All Saints' Day, and I forgot to go on my mother's grave. That's a real shame." No. The next day, they got to the kitchen, and on the table were two little statues. There was a kind of clay statue that my friend had made of her mother when she was in primary school. So the statue represented the mom. And next to it was one of those little straw dolls that you put potpourri in. I don't know if you've seen them. They were quite popular back in the 80s. So it was like a little doll holding a basket of flowers like that.
Oh, I know, yes.
And the two dolls were facing each other. And when the mom had said, "I didn't put flowers on my mother's grave," you could see that little straw doll holding the flowers and like presenting them to the mom. So it's almost as if whatever was there could hear them almost. Now, to give you a bit of context, so that house having been in the family for ages, the grandmother had died there. And my friend's mom had a brother who died of TB there when he was about 14, 15, back I think in the 1960s. So we had all these situations of items moving. And let me make sure I'm just telling you things in order, because we spent ages talking about it the other day. Yes, and so we were talking about animals. Now, because they had loads of animals, obviously it wasn't unusual for animals to die. But all of a sudden, they started dying at a crazy rate. So there were situations when, like, I was playing with her in the garden. We're just practicing our little majorette, routine. And literally, we looked down, and there was a dead hen at our feet. A second ago, that hen wasn't there. And he was stiff as a board. He had rigor mortis there, yeah. He just appeared like that. It was just crazy. a cat starting to have this really weird disease that made their eyes swell as well. They said it was infectious peritonitis, but it looked pretty scary. It looked quite awful.
Yes, I'm sure. Mm.
And yeah, that kept finding like the rabbits dying, the hens dying. And there were two crazy things. So she found a hamster with no head in the cage. And she found a goldfish that she'd had for years, dead in the tank, but there was like a hole in its head as if somebody put a screwdriver through the head. And again, you see that, you're thinking someone must have done this. But there was definitely no one else in that house, and because it's an old house and it's all wooden, you would have heard somebody if there had been somebody else. Although I'm saying this, but then they started hearing footsteps, and that was around the 2:20 in the morning business as well. So by then, there's been about 6 months, that have passed since the beginning of the phenomenon. And they started hearing footsteps at night. So sometimes it would be footsteps with a cane. Sometimes it'd be normal footsteps. And the footsteps would go up the stairs, kind of slowly, go up in front of all the rooms at the first floor. Then they would hear the door of the attic open, and they would hear the footsteps go into the attic. If you open the door, you'd see nothing. If you close it, you hear the footsteps again. So that was quite scary. So they were all sleeping in the same bedroom, and they were terrified. So every night they were waiting around 2:00 in the morning to see if they could hear some things. And there was this day, I remember she told me about it, when it was 2:20, they start hearing the footsteps. So they're like, shh, listen. Everybody gets really quiet. The footsteps go in front of their door, stop, silence. And all of a sudden, this massive frame, like with a painting on it, just fell off the wall like that. And her mom screamed that she had a nervous breakdown. And I'll never forget, she said to me, if the wall had collapsed and the devil himself had walked into that room, I wouldn't have been more scared. So I think it was really escalating to crazy proportions. Now, things I've seen as well when I was at her house was the lamps at the, like the chandeliers would start going like this and swinging faster and faster. So the first time that happened, I was with her. We were just chatting in a room. And I was kind of thinking, what's going on? There's something weird here. Like, what's not right in this room? And I looked at her and she was like that. And we looked up and that lamp was swinging like crazy. Quite a few times we got into a room and we found the lamp swinging. There was one time when I wasn't there, but she said they went up the room, in that same room, and everything started with the wardrobe against the wall. And when they opened the door, there was a gust of wind. And she said, like, our hair was flying, literally. The lamp was going crazy like that. A mom somehow got, a moment of thinking. She grabbed this little statue of the Virgin Mary that was on the side on a kind of little table there. And it had holy water in it. I mean, in Catholic countries, it's quite common to have things like that. And she just chucked the holy water at the lamp and it stopped. So they thought, okay, solution, let's go and find a priest. So my friend went to the chaplain of our school, and he just didn't believe in it. He said, nah, like, you're wasting my time. Sorry. So then they went to the local curate in the town church. And he said, I'm not, that sounds too scary for me. I'm not going there. So completely abandoned. And then what was sorry, I'm trying not to forget anything really. So yeah, there was that we talked about that. Yes, and then it's starting to be weird noises as well. So it looked like the house could kind of replicate sounds of the past. So for instance, I've always thought that the footstep with the cane was the grandmother or one of the grandparents, because it would make sense, yeah. But there was something that kind of confirmed that. Back in like the 1960s, the mom's uncle had a cobbler's workshop, which was situated in what is now the garage. And when there was a doorbell attached to the workshop, so if there was a customer, they'd ring the doorbell and the uncle would come down. And that doorbell had been dismantled in the 1970s, and you started hearing it again. But there was no mechanism, nothing. It was the electricity had been cut. And at first, my friend heard it, and she didn't know what it was. And then the mom heard it, and she recognized it. So again, that's something that seemed to be happening. I know in board directory case, there was things like that. that seemed to happen as well.
Can I just seek
Go on.
clarification on that point? Was it an electrically operated bell?
It was, yeah.
But there was no battery or anything when you examined it.
No, the kind of wire had been cut.
Would the wires be attached to a power source like a battery or the mains?
Remains.
Ah, right. But to the best of your knowledge, there was no electricity flowing through those wires.
No, not at all. No.
Yeah. That's
So
interesting. Yes.
yeah, it's the television as well was like flung off the wall once, and they heard something upstairs, and when they went up, it ripped itself from the wall, and then was in the middle of the room. So electrical appliances, I mean, I wouldn't say this was a case when there was a lot of electrical appliances. Like you hear sometimes like a radio starting on their own and things like that. They didn't really have that. But there was these two cases, and the case of the doorbell, which I thought was quite scary personally. Then you had really horrible smells. Somehow it was around the oven. And one day I remember we found like that much liquid in like the oven pan. And that liquid stank to mighty heaven, my gosh. And she put it in a bottle and she made me smell it and I vomited. It was disgusting. It was like acrid and almost like a kind of rot-like. I mean, in the oven, you could argue that, there's grease accumulating and stuff like that. So it could do something. However, it was clear liquid. It was like water. God knows what that was. And then like after this, so another thing I didn't say is that me and her, obviously, we were talking about it every day because, every day there was something new.
Yes.
And she was hating it. She was absolutely hating it. Her mom was hating it. I mean, her mom really like I'd go to her house and she would be like that, sitting in a armchair with her shawl and hot milk to drink. You can see the mommy was really hitting her. The dad,
Yes.
it took him a while to realize he wasn't right, but I think he was trying to keep it at distance.
Mm.
Some people are like that when there's things like that happening. I think they don't want to acknowledge that it's not normal. So they will kind of try to convince themselves that it's not that bad or it can be explained or, that kind of thing. And when you were about 14, so by then there'd be 2 years passing, then that's when it really started getting nasty. So it started with, they saw one night they were all in bed and a mom went to sleep, dad went to sleep, and she saw in the corner of the room it looked like a little cloud. At first she thought it was the shadow of something, but she said it looked like it was 3-dimensional. And she looked at it for a while and was thinking, well, could it be the shadow of this? No. Could it be the shadow of that? No. And then the kind of shadow started moving across the room like that, and it followed the 4 corners of the room. And then it went down and it settled at the bottom of the bed. And she said for hours she was sitting there not being able to sleep and terrified. Eventually she fell asleep. The next day she said, Mom, I've got something to tell you. And the mom said, you're going to tell me about the shadow, aren't you? And mom had seen it as well. And they both said it was something that looked 3D. And generally, like, I'm an occultist as well, because that story kind of kicked out my interest into everything of that nature.
Yes.
And so, spirits often manifest as a kind of smoke, really. Well, personally, I tend to see them as shimmer, but there's a number of people who say generally some kind of smoke, some kind of cloudy thing. So, I mean, that was probably the thing there. Did I tell you about the fact we were calling it ghost?
No.
Give it a name. So that was also a terrible mistake, because when we were speaking about it and there were other people present, we thought that we were being clever by using the English word ghost to refer to it. So to this day, we still call it we still call him ghost, even though we speak French, right? But of course, if you name something, then it makes it more powerful, yeah?
Absolutely, yes.
Right. So obviously, the more we called him ghost, the more powerful he was getting. And obviously, I think he was feeding from people's fears as well. What was weird at the time is, like, although I saw a number of things, I was always curious about it, but not scared, because he was in my house anyway. So, but for them, it was very traumatic. So back to what I was saying. When we were 14, that's when he really reached his peak. And the apex of Ghost's activity was one day she was going to get to prepared to see a friend. So she was up the stairs in the room and everything had started. And if you want, at the top of the stairs with this window like this, it was the first floor. The window was facing the garden. And the side of the window was like this. And she turned around, she saw a hand that was wide open like this. And the hand did that, like closed the fingers slowly like that and disappeared behind the frame of the window. And she went completely ballistic. She screamed. She went down the stairs. She was like, Mom, Mom, I've seen a hand. And surprisingly, her mom said, Look, this is too outlandish now. You're stressed out. You didn't see a hand. That doesn't make sense. You get dressed, you go to see your friend, and we'll talk about it when you come back. Yeah. So she goes to see her friend. She didn't have a good afternoon because she was still thinking of the hand. She returns home 5 o'clock. Her mom's in the kitchen, wrapped in her shawl, drinking hot milk. She's like, Mom, what happened? And her mom said, I saw the hand. And her mom, when she went into the room, she saw a hand that was kind of cut at wrist height, and the hand was holding the knob of the window.
Handle. Yeah.
So mom same thing, was completely traumatized by that. So at this stage, they had they found somehow like a ritual magician. I don't know how they found him. Like it was a dad who found it. And the guy came to the house and he said, Look, it's a kind of classic poltergeist activity. You've got a teenage girl in the house. You've got, I suppose, financial issues. You've got, and we were being bullied at the time. So, tempers were flying high as well. And so he said, Look, when you've got your periods for the first time, things will ease off. And they did, right? So we kind of, both got our periods roughly at the same time when we were about 14, 15. And then after that, it kind of stopped gradually, but not for long. So we finished our studies. We went to university. Before that, there was something. We went on holidays in Spain, and we were in this hotel, and things started happening around my friend. Like a Walkman would start working on its own, or I think a lot of it was gravitating around her anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I think that we'll talk about what you think about this, but I think there's a combination of circumstances that make these things happen. I think there's my friend, and maybe the fact she's more sensitive to things. There's the fact that the house is above a stream of water, and apparently they say water tends to attract paranormal activity as well. I don't know. I think there's. I'll tell you more about that in a minute anyway. But yeah, so we finished our studies. We went to university. Her mom and dad stayed in the house, but nothing was happening. Then her parents died. Then she met a guy and she was pregnant, and it started again when she was pregnant. So I'd like to see what you think of maybe the impact of hormones on that kind of stuff. So she brought her boyfriend to live in the house, and she told him about ghosts, right? And he didn't believe in it at all until one night they were sleeping. She was sleeping and he was awake, and he heard a little boy singing in the room, and and he could hear footsteps around the bed, but he couldn't see anything. And he said it seemed that the presence was next to her. Anyway, she was pregnant at the time. She gave birth to a little boy, right? Who was my godson, who was absolutely lovely. But as the years went, he became the one who saw things. And so his parents separated when he was about 4. And he found it very difficult. He was very depressed about the parents splitting up.
Yeah, sure.
And there was one time when he said to me, "Oh, I've seen this thing when they were in the street parked in front of the house." He said he saw like a cloud shaped a bit like this, like a kind of. He said it was a bit like a snowman, the shape of the thing, and that shape went straight at him like that. Another time, they were sitting in the lounge, and he said to her, "Mom, we're not alone." And she was like, "What do you mean?" And he says, "There's something next to you. There's something next to you." And he said, "You look like a cloud." So he said, "Look, we need to leave. We need to leave." So they went out. An hour later, he said he'd seen a man standing in the lounge. There was one time when he saw something come out of the wall, like a face. And the way he described it, I thought, yeah, that makes sense. He said it was kind of weird colors. And I don't know if you've ever like seen things like that, but sometimes the colors that they take, it's a bit like the negative of the old photographs. It tends to be like
I
gray,
know.
green. You know exactly what I mean. And he said he saw this thing come out of the wall and go at him like that. So yeah, and then partner went to stay there one night as well, and he said he saw a chair being dragged across dragged across the floor, and a crazy racket all night. So it's still happening, and it seems to be happening when there's a strong emotional situation. For instance, when he was about 6, my godson, his father was going to take him to spend the holidays with him. And my friend was very distraught because she loves her son very much. And he didn't want to go with his dad, so they were crying. And so the night before he was supposed to leave, she took him to the bathroom and to have a wash. And the shower started on its own. A mirror broke and fell off the wall. And he had a little toy shaped like a skeleton, and that was flung across the room. So there are still things going on, but it's sporadic. But it seems to be centered around him now. Um, that's my friend's. She's got a half brother, and he said something the other day, and I thought that's quite telling. He said it's like the house is holding you prisoners because the state of the house is bad. It's a hovel because she didn't have money, and her father left her loads of debt. There was loads of repairs that needed to be done that weren't done. And so it's very humid, it's very cold. They need to do a lot of work in it. And a lot of people have said to her, you need to sell that house, buy yourself a flat, because it will cost you so much money to get it repaired that it's not worth it. And she doesn't want to leave. And I said to her, do you realize that makes no sense, right? Anybody would sell that house. And she doesn't want to. Her mother didn't want to leave either. And when obviously all the phenomena was happening when we were teenagers, because they were poor, they couldn't move. Yeah, so trouble there. Technically, I think the house was owned by one of her uncles, but the parents lived in it and they didn't pay it back because they were so poor. They were okay to have them living there. So technically, I think if she wanted to sell it, she'd have to ask the uncle. I'm not sure exactly what the situation is there. But yes, it's like and the brother said it's like the house is holding you all prisoners. And yeah, I say that's probably there's a part of true in that. They're very attached to that place, despite the fact all these horrible things have happened. I was saying to you earlier, there was the fact that there is a current of water under the house. That back in the 17th century or late Middle Ages, it was that area of town was a place of executions as well. And what was that? I've written a couple of things there as well that we discussed, me and her. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, that was it. I think I've said everything really. The fact is teenage girl, young boy, heightened emotions, water, house with people who have died in it. I don't know. So that's what I can tell you really. I mean, I've
Well,
talked a
thank you
lot.
very much. That's very comprehensive. I can ask a few questions
Go
to
on, go
sort
for
of
it.
put it in a framework of time and space, really. And I'm guessing a little bit here, but I would think that when this started happening to you as a teenager, would that be mid 1990s?
Yes, about right, yeah. Oh no,
Right,
before that, it was about 1991, I would have said, because I'm 47 now.
right. Was there any previous history, either by family members or guests, or I mean experiences by prior to that?
No,
Hmm,
not that I know of anyway, but I know we know she never mentioned that.
right. And it's been carrying on for how long would you say from the, what, 1980? Yeah, let's
It
say
would have been
1981 or
1990 because
something.
I was 11 in 1989, and she's, there's 6 months between me and her. So it would have been in 1990, and it's still to this day. There's still things every so often.
So it's sporadic now, but that's over a period of
30 plus
yes,
years, really.
25, 30, 30 odd years, yes.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I can't press a button and say, well, here we are, this is the answer. It's
No, no,
quite
of course.
simple. What I can say is that many of or a lot of the descriptions that you have given so clearly and the historical situations there, um, they are quite common, but there are some uncommon elements there. Now, I think you're going to find this in any what you might call so-called poltergeist situation. You have a core set of phenomena that, you might say that out of, let's say 20, suppose about 20 effects that you might be expected to see in a typical, if there is such a thing, a typical poltergeist experience. There's a whole litany, a library, if you like. There could be about 20 different things that are happening. It usually starts with sounds, raps, um, noises, pretty um, inorganic noises, really. But by that I mean they don't seem to be as a result of human source or anything like that. To begin with, it just
Mhm.
knocks and raps, but then they can develop as if an intelligence seems to be behind it. So you've got this whole library, but it would seem that in any particular poltergeist case, you can say that of those 20 possible things, you might have about 9 or 10, about half of them from that huge library of effects. And they could be different, a different selection of those for different cases. And the pattern will be different, but the core phenomena of, say, those 20 possible ones, you could put out half of them, but it'll be a different half for depending on the individual circumstances.
Mm.
So let's see what we can find that is common to many of them. Human agency, certainly. Emotional circumstances, you're quite right that in many of them, not entirely all, but teenage participants, teenage experience. More often a girl rather than a boy. That's how it seems to happen. But we also find, as some of your contacts have been finding, that people of other age groups can somehow get drawn in or can experience something quite independently and at a different location. Uh, I investigated a case about 20 years ago in Devon, uh,
Oh,
where, yes, the experience, if you like, the focus was not young teenage girl or boy, but a middle-aged couple. And
right.
to me, after many sessions with them, just listening, making notes,
Yeah.
um, that it was certainly an emotion there, and a rather unusual sort of emotion. And I'm giving you this in a bit of detail because it shows how those boundaries of the sort of the commonality of the symptoms, if you like, can can expand in a rather unusual way. What was happening was that the gentleman concerned, they lived in a council house, and his wife was he was very well educated. I think he was an architect by training, and his wife was a very homely character. Can I call her that? Um, Different, you might say, different social grouping. And when we discussed this, and they would open up a little bit more, and it seemed that his children, he had children from a previous marriage or association, and they were distinctly unhappy with his choice of partner. They thought that he was too good for her, if you like, but for him it was a perfect situation. So the conflict, the emotional conflict, was not between him and his partner, but in a sense, an outside selection of family members who were sort of imposing an external will upon them. Now, that's unusual, but it just shows you how that can expand and it can draw in all sorts of things. Now, what we tend to do, if I'll come back to the no, I'll ask the question now. The only help you seem to have got there was by the magician.
Yeah,
Certainly,
I call him a magician. I mean, as an adult now, because he used the tetragrammaton, and he drew the tetragrammaton and he put it under the bed. He made no difference whatsoever. It's going to be said.
no.
I don't know why he used that formula as well, because it's a formula of creation.
Mhm.
It's not a formula of exorcism. I said,
Don't know.
nowadays I would have said do the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. That would have
Yes.
been the logical things to do. I don't know why he did that. But I mean, to know the tetragrammaton, I'm thinking he must have done some ritual magic.
Well, a lot of people use uh, a protection ritual, and I think that's probably what it is. Whether they believe in it or not, they feel they have to sort of protect themselves by a ritual, just in case, if you like. But
Yeah.
he does seem to know a little bit about, from a sort of scientific point of view. He's probably read about it good. Very disappointing, of course, that there weren't more educated priests, if you like, uh, who could have at least given some reassurance. I think that's what you might have been looking for at the time.
Yeah.
Some explanation, some saying, "Look, this is surprisingly common."
Well,
And
this is it. But this is France, and it's the country of Descartes and rationalism. It's a lay state.
yes,
So
oh
people in
yes,
France are
yes,
very, very dubious, especially in back in the 90s. Nowadays, with the internet, etc., ideas
yes,
travel faster. People are more likely to talk about paranormal activities.
hmm,
Um, but back in the day, they were ashamed of this because they thought everybody
yeah,
was going to think they were mad. And the
mhm.
fact the church wasn't willing to help.
No,
I mean, under John Paul II, they weren't really stressing exorcism or anything like that. I mean, Pope Francis, I understand he had a lot of exorcists, um, you know, nominated and sent on their way to exorcise people. But I think under John Paul II, it wasn't the case. He was seen as something that was detrimental to the image of the church.
yes. In fact, as far as the Anglican Church is concerned, I mean, I've met some of the so-called exorcists. They don't call themselves that because, as one said to me, he said, look, he says, we don't do any exorcism at all. What we do is listen. And we find that people will unlock some of their innermost fears. They will talk more freely, and we begin to understand the psychology of the situation. So we're just psychologists, that's all.
Mm,
And this is the tragedy, really. As you say, luckily it's getting a little bit more open. But oh, I'm sure that if I had been if I hadn't had the sort of education of people who knew an awful lot more about it than I do, say this in the SPR, I mean, I'm sure that I would have been uh, very superstitious or ignorant about it as well. But I think these days, as you suggest, we're luckier anyway. Now, what we do when we are invited to hear about things like this, we try to meet at a place where they're comfortable, their own home, and we just let them talk, record it if they will allow it, and just allow them to talk about it around it, in and out of it. And we would just do little prompts now and again to just sort of keep it on a logical course, keep the conversation, which is more a listening exercise, on this logical course. And we say, can we come back again, have another chat? And if they're happy with that, we suggest they keep a diary where they.
Which is why we've got all this information, because she recorded, she remembers everything very well. Yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, actually, I think there's I don't know whether she'd be interested, but this seems to me that could be published in journals.
That would be interesting. I mean, because she told me everything in order. So I don't know if you remembered it, because I don't want to say something that's not true. I've got to say.
No.
She remembers everything. Whether some of it she's written down at the time, but I don't think I know she kept records, because I kept records in my private diaries anyway of what she was telling me. But whether it's all in one place or not, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
No, because the point being that we say, well, look, can you write it down exactly when it happens? Ignore it while you're writing it down, whatever it is. Date, time, place. And if you have a witness there, get them to write notes as well on that, and to sign it and date it. And
good.
What's the purpose of this, you might ask? Well, the purpose is that of any research. We might not be able to explain something immediately, and I'm talking about chemistry, subatomic physics, fundamental particles, stars, and events, astronomical events, but by observing and recording over a long period of time, the possibility is that our successors, even if we don't see it ourselves, they might discern a pattern. And it's like I said before, experience suggests there might be 30 or so, 20 or 30 different core phenomena, if you like, in poltergeists. We know that because people have done just that, and they've recorded them when they've had the opportunity.
It'd be interesting if I translated some stuff for you. I could always send them to you, and you could add that to your files. I mean, I don't know if you're interested in things that happen abroad, but
yes.
That would, I'd be happy to translate things for you, because at the end of the day, she says to me, "I've lost years of my life to this thing," and that's the way, she's not. It's not something for me. It's kind of exciting and interesting, even though it was scary. But for her, she feels like she's lost years of her life to this, and that it caused such distress to her family. And it's funny because, I said to her, you must be psychic to a degree, because all this is happening. And even to this day, there's still things happening. But she, unlike me, she doesn't want to push it. She doesn't want to, maybe learn tarot or anything like that to see if,
No.
She's not at all interested. And it's bizarre because on one hand, she's a complete atheist, but on the other hand, she lived in a house with a poltergeist. And you're thinking...
Yes, that's right.
I don't know, but I suppose it's one of those things, isn't it? Until you've experienced it, you don't.
Well, I'd be certainly happy to comment in a little more detail than is possible now. I mean, you've been given an extremely clear and lucid exposition of what's been happening, and I think I picked up the thread of so many things going on there. It would be interesting to see if I could discern any trends, and they're not necessarily immediately logical. But I could say, I might be able to say, or a colleague might be able to say, that's interesting. That's there's a case like this in Andover 30 years ago, or a similarity between this, that, and the other.
This is interesting you mentioned the similarities, because years after that, there was a TV program in France, in this program called Mystère, which was the first kind of program on French TV about the paranormal. And there was a house which was in Armentières, so it's actually not that far, Armentières, but a couple of hours from where we live. And the house bled, but it was on the walls. They had blood stains on the wall as well, and they also had poltergeist activity. And it was this young couple who moved there, and apparently they had some apples flying as well, and they showed that on the TV program. But so they moved house, and whoever was living there after that never had any phenomena whatsoever.
Yeah.
And some people have said, yes, the Armentières house, it's not true. They've made that because they wanted media attention, etc.
Yes.
Obviously, you can never say, because again, unless you experience it yourself, it's
That's
easy to
right.
fix it.
Absolutely. Mm.
And because the Armentières people had actually called the press, obviously they were publicized. So people accused them of having done it for
Yes.
fame. And
Some sort of
in our case, they never called it. In my friend's case, they never called anybody.
monetary gain or publicity. But a lot of people in this country um, give that as an excuse in order to try to get to move into a more desirable house. Say if
Really?
it's oh yes, if it's a local authority house, council house, they will there may well be something there. Uh, a small event, but then they will tend to magnify that and make a real problem out of it in the hope that the council will give them a better premises to live in.
I'd be
That's a
curious.
well-known excuse.
I'd be curious to see. I mean, how often do you see situations like this?
For me personally,
Well, or you contacted about people like that? Would you say you contacted a lot about it? Would you say this
oh
happened?
yes, I don't know. I'd have to. I think I could find out. I don't know how many ASAP, the Association for the Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena. I don't know how frequently poltergeists are reported, but the Society for Psychical Research, which goes back 100 and odd years, I mean, one a month maybe.
Right. And
Yeah.
do people tend to go to the police or not? Because I know in the Enfield Poltergeist case, they went to the police.
Oh well, it depends. If there's any significant damage, it's perhaps not a bad idea to get a potential crime number just in case. But I mean, they're not going to help. They're not going to give advice at all.
I mean, they don't come when you burgle, so they're not going to come when
Oh
you've got
no,
a ghost.
no, that's right. That's right.
I don't think they've got the money to start fighting a poltergeist.
Yes.
So, would you? How many do you think you've investigated overall, personally, over the
Oh,
year? I mean,
I've tended to be more the administrator rather than the
right.
investigator of cases, and that is to if something is reported, I would give it to the most experienced or competent person who can deal with it, or a team possibly. How many have I come across? Well, libraries have been written on this. I mean, my own library probably has about 50 or 60 books on poltergeists.
Mm,
It's well documented. There are some books that are more valuable than others, and if you want, I can make a short reading list of
that
books
would
to
be brilliant.
consult. Yes.
That would be brilliant. So, did you see many cases when? Would you say that hearing noises from the past is something that you see quite often, or not?
Noises, no, not really. Um, from the past. Now, you see, this
Like
is
this
where
doorbell that they had, would you say that's something that's
if I can just talk for a couple of minutes about
okay?
what technically we'd call an apparition, something that appears, paranormal, something that appears. Now, there are two broad categories. One is a personal apparition, and it's a vision, if you like, an experience that many people have, especially if they're touch sensitive, experience of people that they know who are perhaps in a bad emotional situation, perhaps very ill at the point of death, a family member, perhaps a close relative, and they will have a communication from them over distance, over a period of time, saying that, I'm dying, or I'm ill, or I'm experiencing problems. And they can check on that later and find out that, yes, the person has been trying to contact them. And now that's a personal example, a one-to-one, usually two, let's say two living people, and information about an emotional situation to be passed from one to the other. Now, the other side of that, the other type of apparition, is what we would know as the traditional sort of haunting. You are often tied to a place, whereas poltergeists, more often than not, and I can't say for certainty always, but more often than not, they're linked to a person, as we've been discussing. But the hauntings are place related, very often a certain room in a given house. And it's usually appearing to, again, sensitive people. But what they sense, what they see, is usually just a very limited repertoire of stereotyped activities, like a short bit of film being replayed, that sort of thing. And it'll just appear to a person and then disappear, maybe not happen again until somebody sufficiently sensitive comes along years in the future. So there's theories about this, that the fabric of a building can capture and store emotional images, stories, if you like, and replay them. But again, it's very limited in style and usually only appearing to certain people who are sensitive very infrequently. Now, visions, the hauntings tend to be visual. I can't think of anything offhand. Our chairman might be able to point us in the right direction about hauntings, traditional hauntings that have been sounds rather than visionary. But if there are sounds, they're very rare.
Yeah, because there was that was the thing that spooked me the most, was that doorbell. That really, I thought that was quite scary, and it looked like, I mean, the little boy singing in the room that a boyfriend had. That could be a replay of the little boy
Yes,
who
yes,
had lived
could do,
entirely in that very room. Yeah.
could do.
Um, the footsteps with the cane, like I said to you before as well, that could be a replay of the grandparents.
Yeah.
The door. So it's interesting. There's several cases of audition, auditory. Is that the word? Auditory manifestation in.
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely. Yes, correct.
Um, and you say that's not very common.
Not by itself in the traditional haunted house. It's
Yeah.
very common, of course, where you get the human involvement in the poltergeist. Very common there. So which makes us wonder, doesn't it, whether somehow the the actors, can I call them actors? I don't know, because they're not acting, but at least not consciously. But they could, the people who are present, and who knows what memories they may be tapping into unconsciously.
To what extent do you think it's almost like the person that the activity center around is almost acting like a radio receptor, like a catching sound that go
Could
across
be,
time?
yes, could be. In other words, if we ask the question, where is it? If we don't know what it is, and we
But this
can't
is
be
it.
sure of that at all, can we ask the question? Is it reasonable to ask a question, where is it? I don't know. It's an interesting one, that.
Yeah. Because sometimes these things seem to have a way of like when the episodes of the two little dolls on the table happen, it's almost like it, ghost,
Hmm?
could read the mother's thoughts, yes. But at other times, he was just replicating all noises or all
Yes,
patterns.
yes,
So to what extent is it conscious? Now, I mean, when you did the Enfield Poltergeist case, one of the girls started speaking in the voice of the man who had died in the house when he said, "Oh, I died on the stairs" and things like that. Um, so there were cases of maybe that spirit was conscious. I don't know. What's this? What would you say is the degree to which it's conscious? Would you say there's things like that happening quite often when you are in a situation when it looks like whatever's in the house is interacting with the people in a way that it's got some kind of consciousness? And in how many cases would you say it acts just completely randomly?
yes. I can certainly give you some personal recollections of the infamous Enfield Poltergeist, which is probably the best documented case because it went on for 6 months at least,
Hmm.
and the people were observed day and night. Now, it was very controversial because um, the investigators, while they tried to be completely unbiased in their interpretation, they nevertheless did have a certain uh, favor towards what we call the spiritistic explanation rather than the hormone, if you like, the
Yes.
hormone ridden teenager. Um, and this is what bedeviled this for a long, long time. And people are still writing books about it, trying to pick through, looking for evidence to support either the spirit hypothesis or the physical one, or any new idea they've just thought of.
Hmm.
It's cherry picking, unfortunately, and there's a lot of that going on. How? But you asked me a question. Uh, I don't know is the honest answer because it can be interpreted either way. And we need a lot more recorded, and I don't mean tape recorded, a lot more written or recorded in some way, evidence, so that we can in future look for the patterns, look for possible explanations.
It looks like generally it's always a bit of everything, isn't it? It's a combination of factors.
Oh, yes.
And I think of it as something when you have to have different things in place for it to happen. And
Certain
obviously,
conditions to be fulfilled, yes. Yeah. Maybe even temperature. You say, what self-respecting poltergeist would want to materialize in a freezing cold house? So maybe temperature has to be a certain level. That's a silly thing I just thought of, but it might be relevant.
yeah, that's true as well. I mean, the temperature aspect of things. Um, that's interesting. The gust of winds. That's also a classic, isn't it? And they experience that as well. Um,
Yes, I should say that a lot of people think that let's assume that the poltergeist it has it's let's say it has lifelike properties. Let's
mm,
say it is normally asleep, somnambulant, asleep, and maybe when it decides it wants to play a few games, there's always this childlike character you notice in poltergeists. They seem to be, it's as though there's a childlike spirit behind it, and that's why they think it might be a deceased spirit of a child, but not necessarily. But right, some people have the theory, and it's not a bad one, that these things, these physical effects, are activated by it, the personality, if you like, even though a bit unintelligent, is somehow drawing upon the energy from the environment. The temperature of the room is being channeled to produce various physical effects, knocks on a table, moving things. That kinetic energy has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of people suggest that the temperature in the room drops, because the energy from the heat, the energy that the molecules rushing around the room in the warm air, if they are guided to do something else, then the molecules slow down. That energy's gone somewhere else. And
Yeah.
the temperature therefore drops.
Yep, absolutely. It's like us, we need energy to do things, to
That's
make
it.
an effort.
That's it. Yeah,
It
yeah.
would be the same thing. What do you make of the role of water in that? Do you find like humid houses are more likely to have manifestation, or if you're around a stream or anything like that?
Yes, there was one researcher and one author, Guy Lambert, when 40, 50 years ago, published a paper. Again, you've got to be careful here, because people who can make a very strong case, they're usually cherry picking the evidence, they're picking the bits that support their theory. And then it's convenient for them to forget other things. Now, anyway, this gentleman looked through all the cases in the past he could find, through all the learned journals, and wanted to see what connection there might have been with underground water
Yeah.
streams. And in London, in Piccadilly, there are underground streams there, and there were some very significant hauntings and poltergeist uh, incidents. And he made a very strong case for this. But then somebody else came along and demolished it with other evidence. But I think what he was coming up with is worth a look, because it did make the link between underground water. I don't think that it was proven, but there was a connection, some sort of connection, not necessarily a causation. I think you'd call it a correlation. A correlation.
Right.
In other words, two things that happened to be together, but not necessarily one caused by the other. So
Because
yes,
sorry,
there is evidence for water involvement.
you may have come across this Japanese researcher who kind of worked with freezing water, and I don't know who, if you know I'm talking about. I forgot his name. But when they played certain music, or when they set certain things over water, when they froze it, the crystals had different shapes. And you could see that the formation of the crystal was a lot more chaotic when it was done with aggression or aggressive music or things like that. And I don't know if this is complete bollocks, I'm saying this, but maybe what this guy's research is not
I
thorough.
haven't come across that. That doesn't mean it isn't. It doesn't mean it's worthless, of course. But yes, you can alter the shape of crystals matter by applying external influence. By that I mean usually energy. Ice itself, now here's the point. Ice exists in, I think, about 3 basic forms and many others. And this is why you have to be very careful when you're freezing food. People, you've heard it's a common expression, deep frozen or quick frozen, that's what it is. And the reason for, let's say, quick frozen peas, the reason they are quick frozen is they're harvested from the field and put into liquid nitrogen or liquid air immediately. And the reason for that is because when that freezes quickly, a different sort of ice is formed that if it were frozen slowly. And the point is, if it were frozen slowly, it's the sort of ice that when it melts will expand and turn everything into a nasty mush.
Oh, okay.
The quick frozen one will defrost. without changing the shape of the original fruit or vegetables. So that's a little example of how just two types of ice can occur just by the way you freeze it or the energy you take from it, how quickly.
Yeah.
So no reason why it shouldn't be affected by the type of energy or shape of energy, if you like, that you put into it.
Mm-hmm. What I like about your approach is that obviously you're very impartial, aren't you? And you're looking at it from a scientific perspective, as
Trying
opposed to,
to.
like you say, like the spiritist approach versus the scientific approach. I think it's, it's really a question of looking at it as open-mindedly as possible and not excluding anything. So one thing that I was thinking, I mean, I was telling you at the beginning, this has been going over 30 years plus now, and it seems to be passing from one family member to the other.
Yes, that's an unusual aspect of it, I must admit.
I mean, because, the poltergeist activity was at its peak when we were teenagers. Uh,
Yes.
it got another peak when she was pregnant. And then when he was little and he was under quite a lot of stress because of the parents' divorce, it continued. Um, and it seems to be, like I say, it seems to be around emotions. Now, do you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
poltergeist activity going on for a long, long time? Uh, or does it tend to be overall over when the girls, just say girls, but like you said, it can be
Yes.
anybody else, tend
Usually, yes, but not exclusively. Again, I would say most is short-lived, most, but by no means all. You sometimes get ones that, as you say, the outliers, statistical outliers, can go on for a very long time. Now, interesting to ask, what might be causing that extension of the time scale?
yeah.
Is there something in the new, in the makeup, the mental makeup of the new experient, who's sort of almost taken on the mantle of the previous uh, host, if you like, for want of a better word?
Well, the thing is, my godson doesn't know about what happened when we were teenagers. She won't tell him because she doesn't want to spook him. Except that, of course, it's too late because he's already seen things. But he does not know about what happened.
Sorry, this is your friend's son?
Yeah, so he's my godson.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
he doesn't know about it, and he knows there's things happening in the house, but he doesn't know that his great uncle like died
Mm.
when he was 16 in his bedroom. He doesn't know of the footsteps or anything like that. So it's not like he's taken it willingly because he
Oh,
knows
yes.
what happened. It's just past. It's
Mm.
just happened, and he's a boy as well, which is I don't know if you see many cases of little boys. I know in horror films it's quite a trope, isn't it? In that pale and wan little boy, I see dead people, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, but I don't know. I think it's quite weird that he's a little boy and this is happening to him. Um, is there a way? I mean, have you come across families when that's been passed on through the generations?
Oh, I see. I see what you're emphasizing. The fact that it was mother and son.
Yeah.
Uh, um, yes. Well, for example, let's ask the question. Um, what would be the situation if uh, they had just moved out and somebody else had moved in? What would be the chances, if you like, of the new tenant, the new house owner, experiencing the same sort of things as if they'd inherited the experience as well as the house? It's an open question. This I don't know, but you may have put your finger on something there when you suggested a family link there. I don't know. I'm sure there's examples. I'm sure there's examples in the literature, but I can't recall any immediately.
Unfortunately, Lou and Hugh, we're going to have to stop for this edition. But what I think we'll be doing is we'll be revisiting it in another edition of the Shadowcast because there's so much to talk about here. I've been making a list of all the different phenomena, and what we can do in another podcast, another edition of this, is to go through each of them in chronological order and seek an explanation for each of them.
Indeed. And if you, Lou, would be kind enough to let me have some sort of evidence, roughly translated, it doesn't matter. I mean, I can follow
fine,
French,
I can put
but
it in ChatGPT. I can put it for Google Translate because it's all in French there. There's a bit of
that's all right then. Yeah, all right.
yeah, I'll do that if you, that's fine, and I'll pass it on to
Not
Johnny.
that I trust Google, but never mind. I'll
I'm a
yes,
translator as well, so you know that's fine. Like, I'll make
that would be great. And are you in any hurry for that? Did you have a deadline?
what do you mean by that? Do you mean
You'd like me to comment on it?
well, I'd be, there's no deadline. I mean, I'd be really
That's
curious
fine, yeah,
to
because
have your comments, really.
I'm pretty busy on various admin things
Oh,
at the
no, don't
moment.
worry, because I'm busy. I'm about to move house and
Yes,
everything.
but that will early in the new year. I think that would be a fine opportunity. Yes, I'd like to help, and I can even look up books in libraries and that.
That would be absolutely brilliant if you could do that. That'd be brilliant.
Yes.
So I really thank you. It's been really good talking with you. I'm thinking you should come down and bring a bottle of wine and we have dinner. So we could talk about Poltergeist all night.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Oh, well, thank you for being there and bringing your experience to the topic and
Yes.
listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Lou Hotchkiss-Knives and Dr. Hugh Pinoctt, thank you very much for what has been an absolutely fantastic discussion. And as I say, we will be revisiting this and we'll be looking at each phenomena in more detail. Goodbye.
I wish you a good weekend.